It's a world that I never knew existed, and a world that I never knew I always wanted to be a part of. When I first started, I didn't know what to expect, but after going out to my first couple fires and disaster action runs, I felt right at home, and I just jumped right into it and took all the opportunities that were given to me.
I originally became a volunteer because I was watching the coverage of Hurricane Katrina every day and just being upset about it and felt like I needed to do something. So after 6 days, I called the local chapter and volunteered, and they trained a whole lot of us very quickly and sent us to Baton Rouge.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe 13 states were affected. Millions of people, millions of power outages, and I believe, I know that the total damage in New York was about $41 billion, and in New Jersey, I think $36 billion. I don't know how many people were affected, but it was just complete devastation.
This particular woman was 79 years old, living in South Jersey. And as I've told people in the past, sometimes it's 1 hour at a time, too. And she knew that, and I just said to her that, use the resources of her family through this process. And just take one step at a time, one day at a time. And I really think that just sharing a little part of my experience that was similar to she and her sons really gave her some solace or some sense of connection. And I think it's little things like that sometimes that people need to hear about or just experience to give them a little bit of a way to say, yeah, I can get through this too.
Then we had another girl who came to the truck. It was about 40 degrees that day. It was pretty cold. These people had been without power in the cold for 5 days. And she started looking through the piles of clothes for a pair of gloves. She just said, I just need some gloves, I'm so cold. And Karen, the local lady, took her gloves off and handed them to her. The hardest part for me was we were handing out these meals. Cliff and the other people were working very hard in the truck, making them as fast as they could. And there was a gentleman on the other side of the street. There were 2 lanes of traffic between us and him, and he was older. He kind of reminded me of my dad. And he was rolling up the street in one of those little motorized wheelchairs. And he looked over at me with this haunted look that I will never forget. So I got a meal and 2 bottles of water, and I took him across the street to him. And he said, thank you, and God bless you. And as he rolled up the street, he started crying, and the tears were rolling down his face. And I just about lost it right then, but I held it together because we were still there for another 2 hours. And there were, he wasn't the only one, but he was the one that affected me the most.
After Katrina, people wondering how they could help. Shortly after Katrina, I went down to New Orleans twice with groups to observe and to help rebuild, especially in the 8th Ward. The story is always the same. Last minute, I had volunteered to drive one of the emergency response vehicles in Irv. If necessary, I was told, don't worry about it, we've already got 2 people from Cincinnati that are signed up to do it. And I said, that's great. And then on Saturday, about 2:30 or 3 o'clock, they called and said, can you go? And I said, let me check. It's always one of those, check with your wife, check the schedule, make sure you can be gone for 2 weeks. That's a big chunk of time. And I said, yeah. They said, can you go in 2 hours? I said, no. How about 2.5 hours? People say, why did you do this? And the question is, if I don't do it, who will? And I think one of the things we keep reminding people, not necessarily in a disaster area, but in life, is the Red Cross is not government funded. People think somehow the government is giving the Red Cross money to go out and do this, and that's not true. So we need to keep telling people, this is a donation. If you donated to the Red Cross, thank you, this is what's helping you. And that we just have to keep doing that.